There we go.
Woo.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi, Joy.
So where would you guys like to start today?
We could like start with like the readings and then, or like the books, and then we could go on to like the little like the readings like from the module and stuff.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. So should we talk about Aristotle and Dante first, or In Our Mother's House?
In our mother's house.
Okay.
I agree.
So what do you guys think?
I loved it because, and mostly just because of like the details that brought it together to make it really good. Because I went in knowing that this was going to be a children's book about a family that had two mothers. And so there was sort of this like precedence that I had, or sort of an image that I had of it in my head, but it really changed that and challenged it because it didn't, to me, it didn't really just focus on the fact that my moms are lesbians. Like, that wasn't the main focus. It was just, this is my family. And I really appreciated that because I was thinking about it, and there's so many books out there that are, this is my family, and this is how we are unique, and all the other books that are like, so and so has two mommies. It's all focused on that same sex relationship. But this was focused on like, this is my mom, this is my other mom, this is my brother and my sister, and this is what we do. And so I thought that that was really refreshing.
Yeah, I liked how they. Oh, I liked how they. Yeah, building off what you said, they brought it. It was more broader than just. I have two moms. Let's focus on it. It's like we like to have parties, and sometimes people treat us funny and that kind of thing, and how they deal with it. I. It was interesting. In somewhere in the module, Joy was talking about how she was trying to find more books like this, but she couldn't find any good ones, or they were about animals, and she didn't want them to be about animals. And so, even though this was a really good book, it wasn't like because like the author isn't doesn't have a lot of experience with queer culture and yeah. So it's kind of sad that that's the best we could find.
I noticed that. I looked in the summary, and she she does some sort of activism and stuff, but it's with like Russian Americans.
Yeah, she mostly all of her books are about family mostly.
Yeah. So I liked the book because yeah, it was kind of just focusing on how they are a family and like how they kind of work as a family, and and I think like almost like normalizing it, I think was what she's trying to do. The only thing I didn't like though was like I felt like because both of the moms had like short hair, like that kind of thing, she like fell into that stereotype of like what a lesbian would like typically look like, and that's the only thing I was like, which was funny because I had that thought, and then I was like reading through the module, and she's like, other than like she like mentioned it too, and I was like, okay, I wasn't the only one that noticed it, but I do like how it discussed like all the kids like growing up, and then I also liked how it kind of did talk about like the discrimination that they got, and like because it kind of like is really intentional and like bringing up, but then also having like almost like the right words to say for like that situation, which I think would be really helpful if there was like a student who is reading this or whatever, and then like maybe that's something they've experienced, but they like haven't had someone like give them the right words or whatever. I think this does a really good job of that.
I also liked how it was very from a kid's perspective. It wasn't like trying to be a brochure and being like, people are mean to us, but we tell them it's okay and we forgive them. It's more like from a kid, how a kid would really see it, like being confused and like that kind of thing.
Well, and the fact that it was like, I don't know why this is happening. And I think that in that aspect, it was really honest. And I appreciated that. Like it wanted to paint the family structure in a very positive light, and it really did. But especially with same-sex parents, you can't act like there's not something extra that they're going to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kate, I see what you mean with the illustrations, how the moms are sort of the stereotypical, like how a lesbian looks, and
yeah, that's the only thing I didn't really like.
And then the mom who is like discriminatory against them, she's like skinny and blonde and like pretty.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. Like, lesbians can be pretty. Lesbians are pretty. It's like,
yeah.
And so it was making me cringe a little bit. But I mean, it's kind of sad, but I feel like this is the best that we can get. But considering that, it's still good.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think, Haley?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I just asked what you thought about the book.
I thought it was good. I agree with what you guys are saying. I thought that, because, typically, this is like a stereotype for lesbian couples. Like, one of them, like, is more feminine and one of them's more, like, masculine. So, I see what you're saying about the stereotypes with both of them having short hair, but yeah, I guess, is there just, like, multiple stereotypes, I guess? Or, I don't know.
Yeah, probably. I think that's just like the main one that like I've noticed.
Mm-hmm. And like, there'll never be a perfect book that will portray everything without stereotypes.
Yeah.
That's probably why it's good to supplement with multiple books.
Mm-hmm.
I think her route actually having like a personal connection to the queer community, like, because I know when we like look at multicultural books, we're supposed to like look at the like author's authenticity or whatever. Do you think like it was authentic enough? Like she had enough connection to write about it?
I don't think she did personally. I mean, she did a good job considering it, but I mean, Kate, you had mentioned how she writes about families, which is that sort of, I don't know, that seems to me like the only experience she has.
Which is why she focused on the family.
Oh, true. Like she didn't talk about, like she didn't focus on the being lesbian. She focused on them being a family.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, when was this? Because I'm wondering, like now, if it's kind of like changed, if there are more. Oh. Of course, I can't find an actual date. What? Okay. 2009, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 7 years ago. So maybe there are.
What year was it published?
2009, I think is what it says.
Yeah, that's what I found online. And I started typing the title in on Google. And of course, one of the first things that came up was "In Our Mother's House" banned.
Yeah, from
Really?
It's like, oh gosh. That's one thing. I guess it might be an obvious question, but I think it might still be beneficial to put this as a muddy question for 9 minutes. Is why are LGBTQ books banned? It might be an obvious question, but I feel like it's one question that has a lot of different responses. So I'm curious.
Something from one of the articles we read, the one by Case, there was a quote that said that banning censorship in general for children's literature is less about the material and more about who has the power in a lot of cases.
Mm. So it's like whoever's in power like deems it like not okay, so then it's then therefore banned. Is that kind of what you're saying, Catherine?
Like the group of people who are really censor happy, they want to be the ones who are in charge of what their kids and everyone else's kids get to read and see.
Do you guys know who decides like what books are banned and like what the process is like? Like, is there like X amount of people that have to vote it like yes or?
Oh, like what the process is?
Oh, I don't know. That should be a money question.
Yeah, my question for 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 seconds is what's the process for censoring books?
I feel like it's probably like a committee or something like in education.
Well, yeah, it's probably different in different communities.
Yeah, because there are definitely some books that are banned in Texas that are not banned in Washington.
Mm-hmm. But then isn't there a national one too almost?
Maybe.
Because isn't it like a banned book list or whatever?
There might be. I don't know.
I could be making this up, but I thought that's what it was. But.
No, I know what you're talking about. It was funny though, looking, because I wanted to get more information on the author, so I looked up Aristotle and Dante, and I looked up Aristotle and Dante on Amazon because they had a bio for the author, and I decided to look through the reviews, and I clicked on the reviews where they gave the book 1 star. And there was one that was just raging, and it had nothing to do with like the book's credibility or the literary technique of it, like whether or not it was a good book. It was, she saw that her son had it on his summer reading list and that he had to read it. And so she, for some reason, decided to go to Amazon and write on this. And she was like, be warned about this book. I'm ashamed that they said, oh gosh, I want to find it because it was a character. Because they just sort of go off, and it was really interesting because it had nothing to do with the book. It was just the fact that the book was known for focusing on LGBTQ issues. It seems LGBTQ seems like one of those issues where people don't really care what the medium is, like whether it's a book, whether it's a group discussion. They just don't seem to want to talk about it at all.
Mm-hmm. React.
They just shut down.
As soon as they get the association, they just react negatively.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, gosh, I had it. But they were talking about how they said that the author was gay, which I didn't see anything about that. But they said
you mentioned that, right, in your post.
What was that?
Catherine, didn't you look into it and you said that the author was?
But it said that he came out when he was 54 as gay.
Oh, okay, so he is gay.
Was this before or after he published? I'm guessing this is probably before.
Yeah, probably before
published.
Oh, this was in 2016, this review. But they go, this author had a trauma when he was young, sexually abused. Like it almost always happens, he became gay. This book is trying to push the gay agenda onto our kids. I will read every book before I hand it down to my sons. The author should be ashamed of himself. If you try to push your agenda onto adults, then the reader can make up his own mind. But a youth? Really? Do you know no boundaries? Do you have to take it onto other kids for revenge on what happened to you as a child?
This is exactly what the article was saying, how they politicize the censorship people, they politicize it.
The agenda.
Yeah. Which I don't even, here's the thing. I feel like any author in that situation would never, this isn't his agenda to turn people gay. Like, that's not, I don't think, I've never mentioned something like, yeah, it's just I think it was for him. It's important because it's personal because he identifies as that, and like therefore I think, and there's not a whole. I mean, I think recently I've seen some more like books about that, but like there's not a lot out there, and so for the two that are, especially teenagers, like that, I think this was an important book for them to read, and it's not. I don't think it's gonna turn anyone that way if they don't already have those feelings.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
so
I mean, it's just a story. Like,
I know.
Yeah,
when someone writes a book about like any other topic,
yeah,
called, oh, this is your agenda, you're trying to do this. No, it's just like a story. Like,
if I write a book on a hippopotamus, I am pushing a hippopotamus agenda.
Well, and for me too, I am like, I'm straight, but like I really did like value like kind of like the honest way that they talked like in the story and stuff, and it wasn't even, I mean, it didn't really even talk about it till like later on, but like just how they interacted with like their families and like the struggles that his dad. I mean, I think that's a lot of people's situation, like where there's been trauma or whatever, and for a person they have to like get through it. That's what I really related to, and it does have that aspect to it, and I think that's important for people.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed how it had Aristotle and Dante progress in their sexualities at different rates. Dante was super ready to accept that he was gay. He wasn't it? I think he moved to Chicago. Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he moved to Chicago, and then it was almost just like this realization that he was super comfortable with, and he was like, I think I want to try kissing boys. Let's try this. But Aristotle resisted so much, and I think that that's important to show, because there are going to be kids out there who feel like what they're feeling is wrong, or that it's just like in their heads, or it's not how they actually feel. And so there are going to be kids that progress in their sexuality faster than others, and I think that it was really impressive of the author to include that.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think about the family structures in this book? Like because there was Aristotle's family that had a lot of drama with his dad and his brother.
I mean, I liked it. I liked how you have kind of this family that doesn't really talk that much, but they're still family, and then you kind of have nothing with because he's an only child, like they just all talk to each other and they're all really close. Because I think it's kind of like there's a range, and I think like a lot of people can kind of be on one side or the other, and I mean I kind of realized that my family's kind of like a mix of both. I feel like, and so like I don't know, I just liked it. I liked both the family structures, and I liked how for me personally, like my parents are still married, but I know a lot of shows out there are just showing parents that like either a parent died or the divorce, which I do think that is a reality for a lot of people, but it seems like there's not a lot out there that have them where they're all still married, and I really liked how in both of these like they were. I think it's important to have both, and like I don't know, I thought that was kind of cool because I think it really allows like kind of like this support system for these characters.
Yeah, and that was really cool how they both found support in the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I mean, I really liked that they focused on this aspect instead of the other, even though the other is important, which I'm going to say the other is important to recognize because it's true, but the fact that this was a story about gay teenagers and it did not end in suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
because
Yeah.
I feel like everything is talking about how these kids, they'll become a statistic. And that was one thing that was in the article that I was reading, where a teacher was talking about battling homophobia in schools, and she talked about this one student who, she basically helped this student find a support system, and she goes, this student could have been a statistic, and then goes on to say the actual statistic of like 1 in however many LGBTQ teenagers commit suicide. And I feel like while that is super important to everyone who's an ally who wants to be there to support LGBTQ people, it's really depressing for people when they realize that they're LGBTQ. Because they're like, am I supposed to be having these thoughts where I don't want to live anymore? And I think seeing a positive outcome in this book is going to be really helpful for students.
For sure.
That one article, it was in like the second part of the module, like amidst a big list of links, but it was talking about that thing, like how people portray stats about LGBTQ youth and suicide, and like it is important, but the reason that you use it is really important. A lot of people will just find the worst one they see and just put it out there as sort of like something to get you like shocked or emotionally charged, but that's also not the whole story, and it's not the best view of that group of people.
It's not optimistic, and it's not encouraging to the kids who are trying to deal with this and get through it.
Yeah.
I feel like what you brought up, Kate, like about how their parents are still married, might have been a choice made by the author on purpose, because like I feel like there's assumptions when like people realize that they're gays, it's because they came from like a bad home situation or like something happened to them. So the fact that, you know, their families were still together and they didn't commit suicide and stuff, like I feel like the author was purposely trying to show like people can be gay and be okay, like
for sure, yeah,
like showing the optimistic side of like what the statistic shows and stuff.
And that kind of goes back to like whole asset-based viewing of a person in deficit, like
yeah.
And I think that it was probably definitely a purposeful choice. I didn't even think about that until you said it, Haley. But probably just to show that there was, as that lovely person in the review said, there was nothing in that book to make these people become gay.
Yeah, because both of them had straight parents.
Straight parents. Like, if they really wanted to find something, they could say, oh, the trauma of having a brother in jail for life turned Aristotle gay. But then there's
nothing in relation too, so it's like,
yeah. And then there's Dante, and Dante was totally fine. And he had basically like a perfect life, except for like he moved. But everyone moves and they'll be straight or whatever they are. And so it's just sort of probably that combating that idea that people turn gay.
Yeah. Also, I was a little worried when I first started, like the first couple chapters, I think, or like a third through the way of the book, like Aristotle was talking, like he would, I don't know, it just sounded like he was like depressed at first because he would talk forever, like really sad, like I don't want to, like this life is so boring, blah blah blah, like before he met Dante, and then even sometimes during that he like couldn't talk to anyone and he couldn't trust anyone and stuff. So it was nice to see that he actually like turned out good.
Yeah, and he worked through things. He found support. He recognized his feelings. Like he worked to get issues resolved.
Portraying them not as helpless weak in, deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Like they lived their life. They were happy. They were happier once they finally accepted when they finally accepted each other.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any final thoughts?
Oh, I did, like a quick thing. I did really like the girls' worms and body issues, I think was the thing. I loved that article. I thought it was great. Because I was like, when it said like second and third graders, I was like, what? Like, there's no way they're gonna be able to like talk that much about it. And like, she just had some bumps along the way, but she still kind of got to where she wanted them to start thinking, and they recognized a lot of things. I think she did it in a really interesting way too to get her students thinking about gender roles. And I don't know, I just really liked the article, and like my sister's around that age, and like she's totally like a tomboy, and like and I was starting to think like my own like thoughts about gender roles too, and I thought that was a good way to like, if it needs to be addressed with um younger kids, like it is possible to talk about it with them, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I like
And then it was really interesting that after all of these discussions, all of these activities, the girls were still talking about dieting. And so,
Well, I mean, at the end they said no.
oh, I assumed that she was still dieting. She said, I don't diet on the weekends, but then I just thought that means she's still dieting.
Oh, you're right. I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of change in there, so that was good. But I know it's just kind of like crazy how, one conversation or one little unit isn't enough. I feel like it's like this constant reminder to people, like, of this challenging of what
If
society
your
says.
whole life you've been told that you should be dieting and you start dieting, then one unit in school isn't enough. And so as you just kind of have to learn that you can't fix everything.
Yeah, and it's kind of a crazy reminder of how soon you should start with these type of like units and talks. Like, I wouldn't even have thought second and third grade, but really you should, because it was an issue. And yeah,
I saw kindergartners have a self-facilitated talk. Like they started it, they finished it themselves. Because one girl came to school and she was wearing it was like definitely marketed towards boys. It would probably have been bought in the boys section of the store. And it was this like sweatshirt. And they were walking to recess, and all her friends that were girls were like, why are you wearing a boy sweatshirt? And she's like, it's not a boy sweatshirt. I like it. It's mine. I bought it, so it's my sweatshirt. And it was like, that was so inspiring, because it's like, and it did make me realize, I'm like, whoa, they're having these conversations really early. But it also like, it was also really cool to see that they're able to have these conversations early, because it sets a precedence. And when you were saying one unit won't be enough, and that consistency also relates to combating anti-gay language. Like they were talking about in the Out Front article, like it took one long lesson to make some progress with her students on watching their language and making sure that they're saying things that won't hurt people. And even like my parents can be, they're not super conservative, but they do things that maybe just like aren't as liberal as our generation usually is. And so there was a point where my mom was saying the R word a couple times. And I was talking to her and I'm like, hey mom, like that's really hurtful. We shouldn't say that word. And a couple times she like blew it off or something. But I was really consistent with her. Whenever she would say it, I'd kind of call her out. I'd be like, Mom, don't say that. And then it was actually a couple days ago, she said it, and then she corrected. She was like, oh, sorry, stupid. And so it's like that consistency, like, it was really inspiring to be able to like sort of help make a change on that, and especially with someone that I cared about, like my mom. And so I think it's the same thing goes for our students. Like there are going to be some that just resist or blow it off. Like yeah, whatever, and I'm gonna say it anyway though, but if you're continuing to be like, no, don't say that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh. I think this is really related to what you were saying earlier. Anyway, I think we don't give kids enough credit for how much they know. Because kids see everything and they observe it all, and they're not innocent, cute little cherubs who, only see what's eye level. And so if they observed all those things, they're capable of talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else before we head out?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Thank you guys for meeting early. It was a huge help.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.